Happy Summer Tuesday. And yes, I am going to say that through the entire summer. Every day will have a summer before it, because summer, it doesn't really feel like you're working, does it? Unless you had the day that I had. Because any day that has the word Epstein injected into it, well, that kind of takes the summer out of all of it and makes it a work day. So I'm just going to power through it, and hopefully you'll just help me along as I tell you that I thought he was just dead and gone. I thought he was so dead and gone. I thought I kind of knew all the really disgusting stuff about Jeffrey Epstein, and then came today, and the reading that I did, and the listening that I did. There's a whole big document dump that came from Palm Beach County. The law forced their hand. Prosecutors there did not want us to see what the grand jury process was like when they gave Epstein that sweetheart weekend jail-y kind of deal they gave him. But now, law forced their hands. And we got all the documents, and we got all the tapes, and we've got these disgusting details that apparently the Palm Beach prosecutor didn't think was a big enough deal. Gave him a sweetheart deal instead. I will let you decide for yourself. That's all coming in just a moment. But then I also want to ask you, if you are asked to name a motorcycle gang. P.S. They're called motorcycle clubs. But if you were asked to name a famous one, what would be the first one to pop into your head? I heard you. I heard it through the camera. I heard you say Hell's Angels, because Hell's Angels, it's like Hollywood famous, right? Turns out an entire chapter just got clipped. The whole chapter. Arrested, cuffed, hauled in, charged. Why? I thought it was really hard to arrest one of them, right? I also would have loved to be there when the cops showed up, because I would think they'd need a garrison, right? To come upon a chapter of the Hells Angels. They're not known to be sweet. Anyway, tonight, a former chapter president is going to join me, which in itself is amazing, because the whole Omerta thing with biker clubs, you don't talk, but this guy, he's going to talk. He's going to tell me about this big arrest. And then the Karen Reed verdict. I know, I'm not over it either. I always say I wish I could have been in there to listen to the deliberations. And as it turns out, guess what I have for you? I've got the whole fly on the wall thing for you, because we have a source that knows what happened inside the deliberations. And I also have this amazing information about what charge they all agreed they were not going to go after. How about that? A deadlock jury all agreed on one charge that they thought should be tossed out. I'm going to bring that all to you in just a moment. And then, did you know that today was World UFO Day? You should have known, because it's the day after Canada Day. Thank you. And it's also a couple days before 4th of July, but it's World UFO Day today. And so we thought it fitting to bring to you the latest amazing sighting. So let's just pop that picture up on the screen so that you can see what we have seen in Missouri. That happened on the side of the road. Perfectly good explanation. All of it is coming in just a moment, but you will have to stand by for just a moment, because I want to start here. We thought this when he was arrested by the feds in 2019. We also thought it when his death in custody was ruled a suicide. And then we really, really thought it when a mountain of court documents long held in a secret vault was finally made public at the beginning of this year. We thought there can't possibly be any more bombshells about Jeffrey Epstein, but we were wrong then, and we were wrong just before tonight. Because true to form, the latest revelations are equally, if not more, disturbing than the last. So I'm going to ask you, brace yourself. Because yesterday, a judge in Florida released dozens of documents in the Epstein case. Documents that blow the lid off the state investigation from almost 20 years ago. And as it turns out, there is a good reason that the prosecutors down there did not want this stuff going public. Unfortunately for them, they had no choice, because a brand new Florida law is forcing these documents to go into the sunshine. And the secret documents were released in one big dump yesterday. They show a police investigation that was thorough, that was professional, that was incredibly damning. I dare say in many circles, it would be called a slam dunk. But somehow it ended instead with a plea agreement that in every circle is called the sweetheart deal of the century. What is stark and glaring is that Florida prosecutors, not the cops did a great job. When they handed all their business over to the prosecutors, those prosecutors knew full well that Epstein had raped and trafficked teenage girls 2 full years before they essentially let him walk. In addition to the documents, there are also recordings of those police interviews, the ones that the investigators conducted with some of the young victims. And while they are explicit and uncomfortable, honestly, they just really lay bare how much these prosecutors knew. And they also really, really lay out for us how hard it was for these girls to talk and tell what happened to them. The faces are blurred. Some of the audio is a bit hard to make out, so we've added some captions, but we wanted you to be able to watch and listen for yourself.
Make an appointment to go work.
Yes.
Okay. And the same thing, you go into the back door to the kitchen area. You meet.
Yeah. Then she takes me upstairs.
She takes you upstairs. Okay. He offered you more money to get naked?
Yeah. Well, he told me just to take my shirt off. He didn't say anything else.
Okay. And did you?
No.
No. But that's not the only 2 times you've gone. You've gone more times.
It was like around like 3-4 times. And then I was just scared that he was going to do something.
Okay. Did he ever photograph you?
No. Now that I know.
Did he ever take videos of you?
No.
Okay. Did you ever give the massage with any other woman?
No.
Okay. Did you ever get naked while doing the massage? Any of the massages?
Once. But it was in my underwear. It was never completely naked.
Okay. You stayed in your bottom underwear?
And my top.
And your top, so you stayed in bra and pants. Okay.
I think it was one that I took my bra off, like I would say.
Okay. And each time you went, did he offer you more monies to do more things?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I knew that because of... You probably know her. I don't know her last name.
Okay.
Because she asked me, she said he offered me more money if I have sex with him. And I said, that never gonna happen. There's no way I'm gonna do that for money.
Okay. You were going to...
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how everything started.
That's how everything started?
Half of the school knows about it.
Half of the school know about it? During those 15 times, rather than go through one by one by one by one by one, 15 times, would you say that things escalated?
Yes.
How old were you when you first started going to the office? Obviously you were.
Right. I am not sure if it was before or after my 17th birthday. So I was either 16 about to be 17 or I just turned 17.
You mentioned earlier that he had touched your breasts. Did you ever use the massager?
Yes.
On you?
Yes.
Okay. Was that over your panties or without panties?
Over.
Over your panties. Was there ever a time that you moved your panties?
Yes.
Okay. Did he use the massager without your panties? No. Did he ever use his hands to touch your vaginal area? Did he ever insert his fingers? No. Was there any penetration?
Once. At the end. I stopped going pretty much.
Okay.
He asked me to have sex with him.
I know it's hard to tell because of all the digitizing and the static and stuff, but that's a 16-year-old girl, right? Some of them were 14. Like, he didn't want them a whole lot older, right? 13, 14, 15, 16. By 18, those interviews and many more could have been laid out for a trial jury to see. And there was There was a lot of evidence, too, that police collected from the house. Could have made an easy case, a case that could have sent Epstein to prison for a very, very long time and ended all of his disgusting pedophilia, right? But instead, the prosecutors in Palm Beach County went before a grand jury. I can't believe this is how they seemingly tanked their own case by going after these kids, the young victims, the underage girls, going after them and accusing them. Again, some 14, 15, 16 years old of being prostitutes and somehow bringing that abuse upon themselves. Did I just mention these were prosecutors doing this in their grand jury? You know how they say you can indict a ham sandwich? You can't really, but it ain't hard. And instead, they're tanking their own case. At one point, a prosecutor actually asks an underage victim, quote, "You're aware that you committed a crime?" And the teenager answers yes. Then a grand juror is allowed to have at her, right? And ask questions of the victim. Do you have any idea deep down inside of you that what you're doing is wrong? And the victim answers yes. And then another grand juror gets to ask a question. Here we go. Have you set the goals to not do it anymore? You're well aware what you're doing to your own reputation. And the victim, again, a child, answers yes. The grand juror again, did it ever occur to you that Epstein could have hacked you up? And the kid, the victim, says, well, now that I think about it, a lot of things could have happened. I thought about it a lot. And the juror adds, not a question, just a comment, you should give it a little further thought. I know I'm not allowed to swear on the show, but if there were ever a day where I wanted to drop an F-bomb, right effing now. 2 years later, Epstein pleaded guilty to a much less serious offense, soliciting a prostitute and procuring a minor for prostitution. And for that offense, he spent 13 months in jail, but not like real jail. Not like the jail that you and I would go to. He went to jail at night. He got to wear his little Harvard sweatshirt during the day at his house. He was allowed to work in his West Palm Beach mansion all day during the day and then have sleepovers at jail. In 2018, of course, you know the case blew up, right? Because there was this huge expose by the Miami Herald. And then 1 year after that, 2019, he's arrested, this time by the feds. And they're not messing around. This time they take him to New York. And he ends up taking his own life in a Manhattan jail cell the following month. Don't get me started. I know there's conspiracy theory out there. That's not where I'm at. Between the time that he was locked up in New York and that sweetheart deal in Florida, Epstein continued to assault and traffic other kids and other women for more than a decade. This is where I bring in Jesse Weber. He's an attorney. He's an anchor on the Law and Crime Network, and he's a NewsNation legal contributor. He's been following this case very closely. Okay, so you got to get me off the ledge, Jesse, because I seriously, I want to dig him up and wring his dead, filthy, foul neck. But I also feel the same way about the prosecutors in the case. Why am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I read this. I can't tell you how angry I was, how frustrated I was, but also I felt how frustrated law enforcement was. Remember, the Palm Beach detectives here in this case, they were frustrated by the fact that all the grand jury was presented was two witnesses, that it was a solicitation charge. It wasn't a battery. It wasn't rape. They took this to the feds. And the feds, instead of going after with a federal sex trafficking case, which they very well could have, especially after reading the documents that came out, there was enough evidence to go forward. This deal was presented. Now, what's the counter argument? And we haven't heard a lot of response, if any, from the prosecutors. They would say, I imagine, in a grand jury proceeding, we have to ask these questions of these witnesses because we have to present exculpatory evidence. So if there's evidence to say their stories were inconsistent, or there might have had motives that were not pure, we have to explore it. I still feel icky about what I read. I have to tell you, I think what the jurors asked was very troubling. But I will also tell you, and again, this is not an excuse, this grand jury proceeding happened in 2006. In 2024, we have a far better understanding of sexual assault and what happens to these people and why individuals do not come forward, and that we do not shame them for not coming forward sooner. So you could say the way people thought about this back in the day is different now. Again, not an excuse, but maybe a way of looking at this.
Well, even prostitutes can be raped. Come on, So, the fact that these are kids that are young girls being questioned by older men and, asked such private and personal embarrassing questions, that just blew me away. But also that one of them in the grand jury actually used the word, "You committed a crime," to this kid, right? She was 14. I do want to ask you about the walkthrough videos, though, the evidence, the pictures, walking through Epstein's Palm Beach mansion with a camera. There are some clues in there, Jesse, that you picked up on. And I want to ask you if the clues that you picked up on, first, what they are, and second, if they would have told every one of those grand jurors that those kids were telling the truth.
You nailed it right on the head. Aside from the fact that it's just chilling seeing the lair of Jeffrey Epstein, what you observe are pictures of naked women all over the place, like photographs. You see framed pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell. And aside from that being just, creepy, it's consistent with the accounts of these victims. So if you had a question about their credibility, the videotape shows it. And there's a lot of different elements, and there's medical equipment. You see the bed, you see the massage table. A lot of that, you're just putting two and two together to understand. But what it definitely does is it corroborates this account. And I tell you, I looked at these videos, and I actually was listening to the officer reading off the search warrant. It's the start of an investigation. It's the start of understanding the depravity of Jeffrey Epstein. I think that's the way that I looked at it, and I'm curious if other people look at it too.
Yeah, well, listen, speaking of looking at, as you and I are talking about these graphic photographs on the wall of Jeffrey Epstein's mansion, we can't show them. Like, I wanted to show you because they're in the document dump. They're just too graphic, even with blurring. The things that are on the wall were too graphic. And the kids, they identified this stuff. When they did their interviews, they said, what I remember seeing on the walls, and sure as hell, it's there in the video. Jesse Weber, thank you. I so appreciate your legal expertise, as always. Thank you for this. Sorry to make you look at all this stuff today.
It's okay. It's important. Thanks, Ashleigh.
It's what you do. It's what we do. Okay, I just wanted to let our viewers know as well that if you or anybody you know has been a victim of sexual assault, there is help available, and it is better than what you just saw. Trust me. You can call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE. It's 656-4673. Take a picture of your TV screen right now. And if you miss it, just Google the National Sexual Assault Hotline. We have to take a quick break, but right after the break, why would a state attorney in Palm Beach do what they did? Seemingly tank their own grand jury case in the grand jury room? Well, good question, and one that I intend to ask the current state attorney of Palm Beach. Want to see what he has to say about this 20 years later. We've also got the attorney representing 9 of Epstein's victims. Could they have been spared if justice had truly been done back in 2008? That's next. What Jeffrey Epstein did to scores of young women and lots of girls, it's shocking and it always will be, but now it's well established. What is new, however, and utterly reprehensible in court documents just released in Florida, is the degree to which the prosecutors there shamed the underage victims. Again, some as young as 14, calling them prostitutes, who essentially got what they asked for. I'm going to play you part of an interview with an investigator conducted with a woman known only as AT. And you tell me if you think she got what she was asking for from Epstein.
Tell me from the beginning how you met this gentleman.
Through a friend. Her name she told me about this guy I was short on rent 1 month. And she told me that all I had to do was give him a massage and he would give me $200. And that's pretty much it. And I thought about it. I was like, I really need the money. I've asked my parents. They can't give me the money. I asked everyone I knew. And I went there with her. I gave him a massage, and it was a weird situation.
What else happened when you were providing the massage?
that's just it. He had a towel over his private parts, and he was just laying on a table, and I was just massaging from his knee down for about 45 minutes. And she said all I had to do was give him a massage for an hour. So that's what I did. And then, like 10 minutes before we were getting ready to leave, he asked her to leave because we were in the room together. And all I had to do was massage his chest, and that's it. He had the towel on him. And about 5 minutes into it, he took the towel off and started pleasing himself, which I was very uncomfortable with. Like, I wanted to leave right when I got there.
Okay. Okay, so he was in the room with you until 10 minutes before the
About
massage
10
was
minutes,
over?
yes.
You rolled onto his back?
Yes, while we were both doing massage.
Obviously, to massage his chest, you have to get on his back.
Yes.
Okay. He had the towel still on him?
Yes.
Okay. You were just in your panties?
Yes.
Okay. You started rubbing his chest?
Yes, and that's it.
And then you said he started pleasuring himself?
Yes.
In what way? I mean,
Masturbating.
it was masturbating. Okay. Okay. And did anything else happen?
I'm sorry, I don't like thinking back on this, so...
Okay, first of all, I know this is hard on you, okay? I know that you put this behind you.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I've talked to have, okay? You're not the only person that he's done this to,
Okay.
okay? I've talked to many other girls,
Okay.
and a lot of things have happened, okay? So, just take a deep breath.
I'm trying. It's just I'm not that type of person. That's why I was so...
And I understand that, and that seems to be a case with a lot of people, okay? Either they need cash quickly and they fall into this rut. But that's why I'm trying to
I understand.
look into this, but that's why I need you to be totally honest with me.
I am
and
being
totally
completely
truthful.
honest with you.
Okay. So what else happened?
And then when he started pleasing himself, he got up and he went over to a drawer and he pulled out this vibrator thing, and then he pulled down my panties, and then he started, it was just like this, it was like a stick with this knob thing on it, and he didn't like stick it inside me or anything, but he just, put it on me, and that was it. And a couple minutes later it was over and he left. I put my clothes on and I went downstairs. The 10 minutes at the end is the only time she was not in the room with me.
And that's when he took out the vibrator. And
right, because I told her that I didn't want to be left alone with someone, because I was molested when I was 12. So just like that, just me being alone, like right now I'm kind of uncomfortable. So, and I told her that, I'm like, I'm not going if you're not going to be in the room with me. And I was unaware that I was going to be alone with him for that 10 minutes, and I thought I was going to die.
I can just hear in her voice that she doesn't want to be there. There's an older man asking her these embarrassing questions, and she's telling him everything she can, every way she can. But that teenager said that despite repeated calls to come back and, quote, work for Epstein again, she never did. I'm joined now by Spencer Kuven, who's an attorney representing 9 of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers. Spencer, thanks for being here. What's your reaction to seeing a lot of this and having it made public? Do your clients feel vindicated that the truth is out, that everyone gets to see what the authorities knew before they gave him this sweetheart deal?
I think it's important that the world can now see what a failure the state attorney's office was at the time. We knew as advocates for the victims back then the atrociousness of what they were doing and how they were tanking their own case, as you said. And we were screaming to people to listen to what was happening, and no one was listening back then. The state attorney's office failed these girls. The U.S. attorney's office failed these girls. And unfortunately, they were just run roughshod through a system that just ignored this awful behavior by Epstein.
So this is what I don't understand, right? Like, you always hear you can indict a ham sandwich, and the prosecutors go to a grand jury to get an indictment. So what reason can you possibly think of, with your vast background in, American jurisprudence, What reason could you possibly come up with that they would tank their own case, humiliate these victims, and turn the kids, the girls, the 14, 15, 16-year-olds into criminals in front of these grand jurors and allow the grand jurors to even state that back to these kids?
Well, three things: money, power, and political influence. We knew as attorneys for these victims back at that time that he had hired high-powered attorneys that had flown in from New York and had dug up as much dirt as they possibly could in social media, MySpace accounts, back when MySpace was a big thing. And they were questioning these girls' ex-boyfriends, family members. They were staking out where these young girls worked. And then they tried to persuade the state attorney's office that these girls were undeserving of justice because maybe they had a drink once, or maybe they smoked a joint once with a friend. And as a result, they were pressured. And the state attorney's office was afraid of the power and the money that Epstein had, and they tanked their own case. They sunk it.
Has the state attorney back then, whose name was Barry Krischer, pardon my pronunciation if I'm not doing it right, has he answered for this? I get it. We are 2.5 decades later. Times are different. Me Too has already come and changed the landscape. But has he answered for this and all the young women and girls after his sweetheart deal who were abused and sexually raped and trafficked by this criminal?
No, he frankly hasn't. You know, Barry Krischer was a political animal. He was somebody who got elected to that office and was probably afraid of losing his power and influence in this Palm Beach County area at the time. And so as a result, I have no doubt when all of these high-powered lawyers and all of this money was brought to bear on behalf of this one sexual predator, that he was afraid. And he did not want to lose that influence and power he had at the time. I would love to hear, frankly, from Lana Belilovic, who was the prosecutor, asking these disgusting questions of my clients back then. You know, I represented the young victim who was 14 years old and victim number one that came forward to police. She was absolutely baffled at how they treated her, and she was completely distraught and wanted nothing to do with the judicial process after this.
I can completely understand. Well, on behalf of at least us in the media, you know, please extend her the most sincere apologies for how she was treated by the system. It's unforgivable, and I hope she is, you know, I hope she's healing in some way. Spencer, thanks for being on tonight. I appreciate this.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for exposing this.
I mean, how could we not, you know? Thank you for that. I also want to bring in Dave Aronberg because Dave is the current state attorney for Palm Beach County. He knows a thing or two about how everything works down there. He's also clean as a whistle. So I got to ask you, I thought of you first. I mean, I'm assuming you're even walking through the same hallowed halls, right, of these others. And I keep thinking about guys like you can make a name for yourself. You bring down a whale like Epstein, you can go one or two ways, right? You can take the money, you can take the influence, you can take the prestige, you can take the power, the pressure from a guy like Epstein, or you can take him down because you do have the power. Why didn't they?
Well, it's good to be back with you, Ashleigh, and Spencer Kubin, who's a friend of mine, I thought did an excellent job in trying to explain a lot of this. I can't explain or justify what went on, but I can just say this. Jesse Weber brought up a good point earlier. You know, back then, if you were an underage girl and you were the victim of sexual assault and you received any money or compensation for it under the law, you were seen as a lawbreaker, as a criminal. And fortunately, today, you're seen as a victim, and rightly so. Things have changed. Now, that's not to justify, it's not to excuse any of the conduct back then. These grand jury records are disturbing, and I understand why the decisions by the prosecutors back then have been revisited. But I'm just trying to shed some insight into it. And as far as Barry Krischer, Barry has never been media hungry or media savvy. He never did interviews himself back then. He did one interview after the story broke from the Miami Herald, and that was the only time he spoke up about it. And so he just is different than I am, and, you know, I do lots of interviews. But I don't know because I wasn't there. I came in 7 years after this was long in the past. So can't explain it except for the fact that the prosecutors were facing these high-powered defense lawyers who, as Spencer correctly said, they put a full court press against these girls. And in the end, according to reports, only 2 came before the grand jury. And the questions, as you saw, not just from the prosecutor, but from the jurors, really reflect the time that they were in, that there was a lack of understanding about the trauma that these victims of sexual assault face.
Imagine them saying, well, maybe you should watch your reputation. I mean, a juror saying this to a victim. I only have 30 seconds, but I need you to tell me, why even bring the case before a grand jury if they intended to tank the case in front of the grand jury?
I don't know if going in they intended to tank it. I think, according to reports, there were only 2 who were there, so that could have meant that others did not want to show, did not want to be part of this. It's a traumatic experience having to go through the grand jury. But I'm not going to justify or excuse the questions that were asked. But it is something that, looking back in the year 2024, there's no excuse for it. And it's something that the public is right to revisit the role, not just of the prosecutors, but also of the grand jurors in those questions that were asked.
I'm glad you're in that office now, and warning to anyone in Palm Beach County, Dave Aronberg isn't having any of it. Thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashleigh.
And again, I will repeat this. If you or anyone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, there is help available. You can call this hotline, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, at any time, 1-800-656-HOPE, 1-800-4673. Coming up next, an entire chapter of the Hells Angels busted in California, busted in a big raid. Police swooping in, and not just the locals, the feds too. So exactly how did this happen? And how much Kevlar did the authorities actually bring in? Any of those tanks? What kind of gear did they need to haul in those big fish? Man who's lived the Hells Angels lifestyle for most of his life, ran one of the biggest chapters in the country, joins me next with Insight. You can buy yourself a Harley, and you can get yourself a really smoking hot leather jacket, and you can hit the open road with your BFFs, but that does not make you a real biker. And it sure doesn't make you a member of the Hells Angels. There is no more famous or infamous biker gang in the world, though any angel will tell you it is called a motorcycle club, not a biker gang, and it's more like a family. They definitely live by a code which is often at odds with the law. Case in point, the recent mass arrest in, Bakersfield. Every single Hells Angel in the Bakersfield chapter arrested. Local sheriff, California Highway Patrol, Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, all in on that takedown. They also confiscated 25 rifles and handguns and multiple high-capacity magazines. Tonight, the suspects are charged with bribery and kidnapping and robbery, but also criminal threats, false imprisonment, assault with a firearm, participation in criminal street gang, conspiracy, intimidating a witness, and then this other one, elder abuse. I know. So that's a list. That is a list. I am joined now by George Christie, someone who knows a thing or two about the Hells Angels because he was one of them, and not just any member. He was their chapter leader in Ventura, California for almost 35 years. George, thank you for being here. My first question has nothing to do with the raid. It has to do with you. How am I speaking to you? How is it okay? Because every single time I have ever gone to do a story with a one percenter or someone with a motorcycle club, they say, thank you, but no, thank you. We live by a code, and that code doesn't include you. How are we talking?
Well, I'm retired, and I pretty much have always done what I wanted, and I continue to do what I want. So when I got the call from your producers, I thought, why not? I've not been shy. I've, had my own show on the History Channel, been in documentaries around the world, have commented for years on, as a member, and, now in retirement, I still continue to comment on motorcycle issues.
Man, I talked to somebody the other day, And this is the son of a former member, a guy who's dead. And the son said to me, nope, not talking. So you're a rare find. Let me ask you about this Bakersfield chapter, the whole chapter, which is 6 people. And I was surprised by that number, all taken in at the same time. What is your reaction to that? Does it sound like what you're used to seeing, or does it sound like something out of the ordinary?
Well, I wouldn't say out of the ordinary. I don't know all the circumstances, but, the local police are involved, the Highway Patrol's involved, ATF's involved. And, you get all these agencies together, and sometimes they have a tendency to overcharge. I don't know what the circumstances are. It seems to me that all the different charges that were listed, they all kind of brush against each other. So as this thing adjudicates through court, you might see a lot of these charges dismissed, and, who knows if they're going to take it all the way and fight it, or if they're going to, somehow plead out. The problem nowadays is you get these sentences. I was indicted in 2011, and my last 3 counts were mandatory minimums of life. So you have a federal system where they have a 98% conviction rate. Sometimes you want to deal out. And I know I got in arguments with people when I was a member in good standing because, I figured it's better to use your head than think with your heart. But, 6 members, it's kind of an average charter.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because I thought, once I saw all these charges, including like elder abuse at the end, I wondered if the whole idea was to get the whole chapter, right? Bring them all in and then try the squeeze play, right? Squeeze the concentric circles and eventually try to get some of them to flip on the others. And then I thought, but they're brothers, right? These are Hell's Angels. There's a code. Do you ever see them flip on each other?
Well, I have. I've had 3 encounters in the courtroom, and each one of them had to do with somebody trying to extract themselves from a legal problem that they got themselves into, and they use, sometimes they'll use a head of a charter or, an associate of the charter to, get themselves out of the jam. I'm sure they're pressuring everybody, and hopefully no one will talk, but, it doesn't always work that way. You look at these long sentences and you think, is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't want to go to prison for 30 years. And these guys, find these deals kind of attractive.
I want to spend a whole hour. I want to spend a whole week asking you all these questions about just the culture, the lifestyle, what it's like to be, on the back of that bike. There's a million questions I have for you, but this one is just about this interview, so you'll have to come back. George Christie, thanks so much for this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Always interesting to talk to the folks in the 1%er life. It is so fascinating. All right, something else fascinating. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in the Karen Read jury room. And tonight, you will be, because we've got exclusive details about what was said, where they were stuck, and what charge they all believed went too far. After yesterday's mistrial, what's prosecution going to do with this jury information, especially if they plan to go to round 2 with Ms. Karen Read? That's next.
You're doing anything else. Slumber Pod creates the ideal bedtime environment for the whole family, wherever you are. So join the hundreds of thousands of other parents who sleep better with Slumber Pod.
Clearly, the only people who know exactly why the Karen Read jury failed to reach a verdict are the 6 men and women in the room. But tonight we have the next best thing to a fly on the wall, a trusted source who spoke to a juror directly and says they were never going to convict Karen Read of second-degree murder. They just didn't believe that she intended to kill her police officer boyfriend of 2.5 years ago. They didn't believe it. They said no. All of them. They agreed. We're told that the jury dispensed with that murder charge right away, and then they split evenly, 6 against 6, on the lesser charges. The lesser charges of manslaughter while driving under the influence and leaving the scene of a personal injury and death. And after being formally told to work through their impasse, we're told that the panel actually became, and I quote, very hostile. And eventually they could go no further. So what happens now? The prosecutors insist they're going to retry Karen Read. They're going to do it again. In which case, she will insist again that she was framed. A mistrial is not the same as vindication by any means, but the Commonwealth may very well want to take note of the one thing that this hopelessly deadlocked jury agreed upon. And that was that she wasn't a murderer, in their opinion, regardless of their charge and regardless of their case. In the meantime, there she is, hugging away, walking out the back door. She remains free till they meet again. Okay, still to come. Just in time for World UFO Day, an out-of-this-world traffic stop in Missouri, of all places. Who says flying saucers only show up over deserted cornfields at night? Phasers on stun after the break. You know, the 4th gets all the attention, but it is not the only big day on the July calendar. Today happens to be World UFO Day. And it seems those little buggers are getting easier and easier to spot. This little ditty wasn't really flying, and it wasn't even speeding, but the sheriff's deputies in Missouri did pull over this unidentifiable rolling object over the weekend. I just love looking at it. I don't know what they made it out of, but I am here for it. It seems that the occupants, who looked very of this world, had veered into another lane without signaling, and on Earth, you're not allowed to do that. Also on Earth, you have to have plates that aren't expired, I'm told. Sure enough, these folks were headed to, you guessed it, Roswell, New Mexico, for a massive UFO festival. That happens today. Roswell also happens to be the site of that infamous space alien crash that alleged to have happened back in the 40s. In a Facebook post, the sheriff in Missouri said, the pilot, and I quote, was also warned about strict enforcement of warp speed on the interstate and to keep his phasers on stun while traveling. Very sound advice for all of us. Thank you for watching, everybody. Cuomo starts now.
All right, I'm Chris Cuomo. Thank you for the company. I have 2 news items for you. Biden has trouble in the ranks. That's not news, right? And I don't mean pundits and elected pawns. The money people, state party chairs, you haven't heard about them, but I'll tell you why in a second, and unions are now in the mix of this conversation. And I have 2 suggestions for the Democrats if they want to get to a better place. Also, second item,